Darren Till versus Robert Whittaker. What happened? Darren Till did not go forward is what happened. Darren Till, I believe, was in a singular mindset of I need to counter punch. He watched what Israel Adesanya did against Robert Whittaker and tried to attempt to do the same thing. The issue is that not only was his knee given out, he didn't have the ability for movement, but he didn't incorporate the biggest part of counterpunching, which is pressuring your opponent into making a mistake. Counterpunching is not just sitting back and waiting for your opponent to throw something and then you, out of nowhere, just being able to make that read and then counter them. Because you're essentially giving them any option that they want to engage. Whatever they have in their arsenal, in their wheelhouse for their engagements, how they enter the pocket with a strike to do damage, they can pick from any one of those. It's much harder to read that than it is to do an action, gauge their reaction, and then time that reaction with your counter. This is what Israel Adesanya did against Robert Whittaker. This is not what Darren Till did. There were multiple moments within that contest that Darren Till was in striking range, completely in striking range, and just was not thrown because he was waiting for Robert to throw. Now, it's not like Robert Whittaker is one of these masterful slip and rip artists that just makes people miss and makes them pay for it every single time they throw. That's an Israel Adesanya. It's not a Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker comes straight forward, right down the center line, and if you move off center line, he soft resets. If you've listened to even 20 seconds of any one of my videos, you've heard me talk about the soft reset before. So for those of you that are new, soft reset is when two fighters come together, they engage, they're within the pocket, and then they separate. If you separate, you're the one that causes the separation. You back out of the pocket first, and nothing comes of it. You just leave the pocket free with no strikes, with no pressure. That's called a soft reset. Hard reset is what Kelvin Gastelum did against Israel Adesanya, which caused Kelvin to be so successful against Israel Adesanya. This is when your opponent tries to reset, when your opponent tries to leave the pocket, you don't let them do that for free. You follow them out of the pocket and keep the pressure on. This is something that Petr Yan does extremely well. This is something that Robert Whittaker did extremely poorly against Israel Adesanya, which is what caused Israel Adesanya to win that contest in a spectacular fashion of which he did. This is something also that Darren Till did not incorporate in the slightest in his game. Robert Whittaker would come straight forward, and while Darren Till was still movement heavy, when Robert Whittaker would burst straight forward, Darren Till would step offline. That is when you then counter. That is when you come forward, because you know that Robert Whittaker, after you move off of center line, is going to reset. He's not going to follow you. He does not chase after his initial trajectory that he's moving forward is broken. He does not. Watch the Israel Adesanya fight. Watch the Yoel Romero fights. Watch the Darren Till fight. Robert Whittaker bursts forward. Darren Till steps offline, does a shift offline. Robert Whittaker deems that, hey, he's no longer in this direction, and then he resets. Does this consistently against all of his opponents. So what you have to do then is you have to make him pay for that. Or you have to make reads within that amount of time, because what happens when someone doesn't let you soft reset, especially against a fighter like myself, like an Israel Adesanya, long, slender, not a brute, uses their mind more than they use their brute. If Israel Adesanya or myself went into the cage and just decide to throw down with somebody, we're going to get put out. Israel Adesanya isn't beating Yoel Romero like that. Israel Adesanya isn't beating Paulo Costa like that. Israel Adesanya isn't beating Darren Till like that. Robert Whittaker, any of them, if he decides just to go in there and bang. He has to make reads. So when Kelvin Gastelum is fighting Israel Adesanya and Israel Adesanya shifts offline, steps out of the pocket, Kelvin Gastelum stays on him. So Israel's mind, even his subconscious, isn't thinking about what just happened. It's thinking about what's happening. Because he has no time to go over and process the movements of which his opponent just made if his opponent is still making movements to engage him, to damage him. You have to continue to think about what's happening right now, as opposed to, oh, my opponent is two total strike lengths away from me. It's going to take him some time to get here. I have time to think. I have time to process. That's what Israel Adesanya does. Thinks and processes. So when someone soft resets like Robert Whittaker and gives someone like Israel Adesanya the time to think and process what he just did, Israel Adesanya is then able to pick him apart much quicker. But when he does it against someone like Darren Till, who is not making him pay for that, it works as, I mean, that opening isn't taken advantage of, because fighters go in there, and even professional fighters, everyone has holes. You can have all the glaring, gaping holes in the world. If your opponent doesn't make you pay for one of them, it doesn't matter. I can have my hands down, chin up the entire fight. If my opponent doesn't connect with my chin because of that, those were openings that weren't taken advantage of. Darren Till did not take advantage of those openings of Robert Whittaker, and Robert Whittaker is coming straight forward. He's shifting offline. Darren Till shifting offline and not making him pay for that. Darren Till also, I swear, must have seen what Israel Adesanya did and only had a counter puncher's thought process throughout this 5-round, 25-minute contest. Because there were multiple times when Darren Till could have reached out to 3/4 arm length and touched Robert Whittaker's face, but didn't do so. And it's not as if he's not in range. It's not as if he deems that he can't hit him from there. He's waiting for Robert to throw a strike so that he can counter it. Once again, that's not how successful counterpunchers work. Successful counterpunchers give you something, let you react to that, and then counter your reaction. They don't wait for you to make an initial movement and then counter that initial movement, because it's much harder to do so. It's much harder for me to guess what you're going to do when you're showing me no precursors as to what you're going to do. If every time I step in and throw a jab, you slip your head to your back foot and counter with the right hand, then I know, hey, I'm going to throw a jab. He's going to try to slip. He's going to pull, throw his right hand. So what am I going to do? I'm going to jab. Then I'm going to pull. Then he's going to throw at me. He's going to miss. And then he gets cracked. If you're just sitting there in front of him, he can throw a left hook. He can throw a leg kick. He can throw an uppercut. He can throw a jab. He can throw a right hook. He can throw anything he wants. Whatever he has in his arsenal, in his wheelhouse for engagement opportunities, for sequences to engage the fight. When you're both just standing there not doing anything, he can pick from any one of those. You don't have that many options for a jab. Like for me, for instance, you jab me, I'm gonna pull and throw a 2. I'm gonna pull and leave the pocket, or I'm gonna maybe slip to the outside and get offline. There's not the only thing there that puts you in danger is my right hand. So you realistically only have one sequence or one move set from me of which you're going to get as a reaction from your jab if it's going to land, if perceiving that I get away from it. So as opposed to if I want to engage you, well, heck, I can throw a jab, I can throw a double jab, I can fake the jab, throw a left hook, I can throw a lead off straight right, I can sit in front with my hands down, wait for any sort of movement from you whatsoever, and then pull 2. I can throw a teep kick. I can fake a teep kick and kick you in the leg. I can fake a leg kick and teep you. I can just throw a lead off head kick. I can throw a turning side kick, a step in front leg side kick, front leg step in side kick to the knee. So you're understanding the amount of options that I have if you're just gonna leave open space and let me engage. Versus if you give me something that I have to react to. I'd much rather give you something and have 4 options of which you can respond with than just to stand within striking range when you literally have every option in the world to throw at me, and then I have to respond to that. I thought even in the first round I knew, said Darren Till's timing's off. He doesn't have the read currently on Robert Whittaker's timing, and I don't think he ever got it, because I don't think he did enough to acquire the information needed to get it. Standing right in front of him within striking range, not throwing a strike. And guess what? It was still a close fight at that. Darren Till's still a monster. These are just small technical tweaks and things that have been done to beat Robert Whittaker that Darren Till did not incorporate, as well as a few issues with his counter punch game plan, in my opinion. Now, the 5-round fight could be incorporated in that. I think that Darren Till myself took the 3rd round off because he wanted to be able to make it the full 5 rounds. So maybe that was another good part of it. But if you think about what caused Robert Whittaker to get the win, there's one thing and one thing only. That one thing was output. Darren Till increases his output. It's a much more likely chance that he wins that fight, given the fact that if he can maintain the cardio. So what happened in Darren Till versus Robert Whittaker? Well, Darren Till attempted to counterpunch without giving Robert any stimulus. Because when Darren Till was coming forward with his multiple hand feints, because Darren Till has some of the most hand feints in the game. He has some of the most active hand feints in the game, especially when coming forward. But he didn't come forward much outside the first round. He just waited for his opportunities. Steps in forward, meets Robert halfway, hits him with the elbow, drops him very soon in the first round, and then stops doing that because he thinks that Robert Whittaker has his read. Robert Whittaker is throwing lead-off left hooks the entire time, but he's also throwing leg kicks, but he's also starting off with overhand rights instead. So as Darren Till's attempting to counter this straight left hook that's coming because he's letting Robert engage first, Robert Whittaker is able to catch him with the other strikes. Darren Till did not capitalize on the soft resets of Robert Whittaker. Darren Till did not use proper counterpunching game plan, proper counterpunching tactics to make the proper reads on a world champion such as Robert Whittaker to finish him. Still a good performance out of Darren Till. An even better performance out of Robert Whittaker. And what this shows us with Robert Whittaker is, guess what? He's not one of those fighters that after he takes his loss after reaching the pinnacle that he's going to break. He obviously still has the fortitude and still has the ability to fight the top people in the world. So Robert Whittaker solidified yourself once again as being in the top tier, or 185-pound division. What it showed us for Darren Till was that Darren Till's a young bull and is able to go 25 minutes with a man that went 50 minutes with Yoel Romero. And have it be a close enough fight where you have to think to yourself, how are the judges going to weigh this? Dropped him once, split him bad a second time. Honestly, this fight, even though Darren Till did not win this fight showed a lot of good things of Darren Till and showed that he can hang in there against, once again, a legitimate world champion.